Most importantly, and I mentioned this in my speech, so I'm going to say it word for word. You are the sum total of every choice, action, consequence, achievement, and failure that you experience. One thing does not define you. You are not defined by one element in your life. You're the sum total of so much more. And whenever you feel like you're being consumed by one element of your life, I just want you to remember that your identity is not wrapped around that one thing. That one thing should not and will not define you. But it's up to you to fight for that. It's up to you to reclaim control of your life and make sure that you determine your identity as a compilation of so much more than just that one thing that is tearing you apart.
And at some point, you realize the past doesn't have to define you. The detours, the setbacks, the closed doors, they're all part of the story, your story. And here, we're all about second chances, fresh starts, and those moments that change everything. Welcome to the Breakthrough Sessions podcast, where we talk about the messy, the beautiful, and the in-between. Because every ending is just the beginning of something new. I'm Refilwe, and this is The Rebirth. Let's get into it.
Let me get comfortable. Is this even recording? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you are doing well. My recording booth I'm just gonna record. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Breakthrough Sessions podcast. I am Refilwe s3e3, and we are doing a solo episode this time around. Something that I'm coining the side conversations. It is an opportunity for me to talk about topics that are pressing deeply on my heart that I really want to talk about, irrespective of whether there's a guest or not, and some gems that I've learned with regards to my journey in the last few years, being away from the podcast, as well as what I've experienced while being away from the podcast. So, yeah, you'll be seeing a couple of these episodes come out over the season where I unpack certain topics that I believe are important to have. And yeah, couldn't wait for a guest to have that conversation. So I'm excited. I hope you are as well. I think it's going to be good. So this one that I want to talk about, I've been thinking about for a while. It actually stems from a speech that I did last year. The speech I actually performed it. The speech I actually presented it, rather, at the University of Pretoria, my alma mater. And I was called back by my previous residents, Narina, go Narina, to come and speak to the ladies at the residence who were getting achievements. It was award night, so they were getting awarded with certificates for achievements that they had done in the year. So whether it be academics, whether it be sports, leadership, they were also announcing the house committee members for the next year, so 2025 year. House committee members are like the prefects of the residents. So first of all, to be called back to come and give this prestigious speech was in and of itself a gift. Only because, I mean, it had been how long? 4 years? No, actually, no, 4 years since I left varsity, but like close to 7 years since I left the Rays. So to still have somewhat of an impact, to be able to be called back by the ladies at the residence and the house mother was a blessing. And it came at such a weird time because I was dealing with a lot of mental health challenges, and I was kind of facing those challenges head on while also forcing myself to then do the speech. And that's really where I came up with the realization that both things can exist at the same time, which I've spoken about. I've put it in my content that on the one hand, you could be seeing yourself as a kind of a depressed person. Nobody really wants to hear from you. Nobody wants to talk to you, kind of like a failure, even on the one hand. And then on the other hand, being recognized as somewhat of a inspiration, an example of life after varsity. And that both of those worlds kind of existing at the same time really made me realize that how you perceive yourself might not be how others perceive you. And also, you could be struggling on one area of your life, but excelling in another. And both can exist at the same time. So, yeah, my speech, I wanted to talk to those who had achieved, but also talk to those who were struggling, dealing with the shock of maybe experiencing academic failure for the first time, or maybe even, being on your own, coming from living in your household where you were sheltered to now having to live on your own and take care of yourself completely to an extent, because there's still a certain element of sheltering in varsity and in residences. Um, and I didn't want them to also feel excluded. So my speech really speaks to everyone there. So I decided to touch on both sides. And yeah, I decided to look at identity. So that's what this conversation is about. I wanted to unpack a little bit more about identity and the impact that identity can have on self, and how your identity can change, but also, or rather, how your identity should not change, but also how it's easy to lose sight of your identity or to morph it into other parts of life and make that area of life your identity. It's a sad reality because I often see people turning things like work into their identity, their children becoming their identity, people who are battling with health issues, that becomes their identity. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, that cannot and should not happen. And I just want to talk about my experience as well, because there was a point in time when I turned failure into my identity without even realizing it. I didn't see myself as someone who failed, but rather I became the failure. And I learned through years of therapy and healing and recovery that you are not just one thing that's happened to you or one thing that you've experienced. You are a sum total of that, a sum total of all these things that you've experienced and become in your life is your identity. If we bring back the example about work, you were a person before you started working at X company, and you will be a person after that. You are not your status. You are not the money that you earn, the place that you work at, the employee level that you're on. You are more than that. And we need to really shine a light on reminding ourselves that we are so much more than just one part of our lives. When we think about mistakes, when we think about failures, when we think about the negatives, you're not that thing that you are struggling through. You are more than that. You are bigger than that, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it's so consuming to the point where you cannot breathe because of whatever horrible negative thing that you're going through. It's not who you are. It's something that you're going through. And we need to consistently fight and claw our way back to our identity, to our purpose. So I'm gonna stitch my speech to this recording and you will hear it. And then I want to also unpack a couple of statements that I said in the speech, some parts that I wasn't able to talk about in detail because of the restrictions around the length of my speech, but also things that I think is important to highlight. So without further ado, enjoy the speech.
Okay. That was a beautiful speech, by the way. I'll just get into it then. Oprah Winfrey once said, "Turn your challenges into opportunities, because doing so allows you to move forward. Your life is not static. Every decision, setback, or triumph is an opportunity to identify the seeds of truth that make you the wondrous person that you are." Good evening, all. As mentioned, I am Refilwe s3e3, a former Narina resident as well as current auditor for one of the big 4 audit firms in South Africa. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you who will receive awards tonight. And thank you to the HC and Elizabeth and the house parents and the house parents for giving me an opportunity to come back and relive my Narina memories. It truly is a special night all around. I also want you all to give yourselves a round of applause. Just for being here, just by sitting in your chairs, in this residence, in this university, is a testament to how you have already accomplished and how much you have yet to accomplish. Before we continue, I would just like us to get into a teeny tiny exercise, please. I want you all to look around and see if there's anyone that you know that you're not familiar with, or anyone that you necessarily have never spoken to. I want you to just, for the next 30 seconds, introduce yourself to that person. If you need to stand up and go over to someone, please do that. Just a quick introduction. Okay, you good? Yeah. Cool? So by a show of hands, I just want to check how many of you started your introduction with, "Hi, my name is X and I'm a first year, second year, third year or higher at Narina." Okay. How many of you started with, "Hi, my name is X and I'm studying Y"? Oh, okay. Progressive crowd? Cool, cool. Well, I wonder, did any of you pause to think about the person you were before you came here? Or better yet, the person you will be after you leave? Well, I've been there. When I came here in 2015, I was so excited to begin my life as an independent lady at the house in which I put my trust. I was elated to finally be doing what I worked so hard to get into. It was the opportunity of a lifetime and I had finally arrived. But to say things took a hard left would be the understatement of the century. But more on that in a bit. When I started at UP, I was fresh-faced and bushy-tailed and felt ready to take on life. I moved into Narina, met amazing ladies who to this day have become my lifelong friends. Yes, guys, that can happen. And grew so much as a person. And back then, I was ready to conquer BCom Accounting Sciences on my journey to being a CASA. At the time, I thought that life was as great as it's ever gonna be. Until it wasn't. Yes. I unfortunately failed my first ever varsity test, and that humbled me real quick. And yes, it ended in me making first year the best 2 years of my life, and then making second year the best 2 years of my life. But it also set me on a path that would quite literally change my life forever. As an overachiever who thought she would easily excel in varsity, experiencing failure of that magnitude hurt. I'm sure some of you can relate. Little did I know, I was starting to obsess so much over my failures that I slowly began morphing them into my identity. Suddenly, I wasn't just experiencing failure, I started to see myself as a failure. This is not a story of how I persevered in spite of my failures, kept pushing and eventually got my accounting sciences degree. Nope, that's far from it actually. In fact, I ended up changing my degree, 6 modules shy of completing. See, the thing is, I had fought so hard to make that degree my everything that I lost sight of who I was. I lost sight of my purpose. And surprisingly, failing 3 core modules 1 year after the other forced me to rediscover who I was and what I was made to do. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying failure is the only way for you to find yourself. I'm merely trying to show you a different perspective that failure can gift you. Because unfortunately, the best of us, even those who are receiving awards tonight, might experience failure on their road to success, in and out of varsity. Question is, what do we do when we're hit with that failure? I think the better question is, how do we isolate that failure so that it doesn't consume us and warp our minds into thinking that failure is the end of the world? Here are a few tips. First of all, you stop to take a moment to acknowledge the failure. It happened. It's tragic. It sucks. Take a moment to scream into your pillow. Run 10Ks instead of 5Ks that day, or punch the air, but only the air, please. But then you have to move on to the next phase, dealing with the emotions. Newsflash, it's okay to cry. A lot. Embrace your inner ugly cry. Sob in the car or in the shower. Or better yet, cry on someone's shoulder. It really helps to ask a friend to sit in the mud with you, especially if they can relate. But after that, you have to move on to the next phase, acceptance. Accepting that it happened and figuring out what comes next. Working on tangible steps towards healing and trying not to let it happen again. Or if you're like me, listening to the signs that are showing you that maybe you weren't on the right path in the first place, and finally acting on your intuition. Ultimately, you are the sum total of every choice, action, consequence, decision, achievement, and yes, failure that you experience. Don't get caught up in the challenges of life. Instead, learn to embrace your victories, big and small, such as those that are being celebrated tonight. Because life is big and bold and hard and daunting and scary and magical and blissful and bright. And you are more than just a student or a res member or a sister or a friend or a failure. As I close off, remember, there will be struggles in your time here and beyond that will shape you, or in some cases even break you. But they do not define you. You will always keep shining so long as you remember who you are and stand firm in that, authentically and unapologetically. So allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Refilwe Dimposekwe, a friend, a daughter, a previous Narina resident and HC member, a series watcher, an internal auditor, a challenger, a lover of life, an exemplar of failing forward, and a masterpiece in progress, and so much more. And you can be all that too, and then some. Thank you.
Okay, so we are back. And I just want to talk a little bit more about what I mentioned in the speech, a couple of points that I just want to highlight. The first thing and the overarching thing that I want to talk about is the fact that that recording was made before really big aspects of my life occurred. It was before the official end to my job, as well as before my car accident. I think it's so chilling to listen back and watch content that I took before some of the bigger changes of my life happened, because it's like she doesn't know what's coming. Like she doesn't know what's coming. And it's quite it's chilling. It's chilling to see that and to watch, yeah, the past version of her, I guess. So that was something that while watching back, I thought about, like, damn, she doesn't even know that our life's about to change again. But yeah, um, life happens, hey? Genuinely, it happens. Um, the next point that I wanted to talk about was failure. So failure was the crux of my speech. And I mean, season one, I talk about my story of experiencing academic failure. You know, I started off in accounting sciences in 2015. Almost immediately, I felt really miserable. I wasn't enjoying what I studied, which showed in my marks. I passed everything relatively well except for one module that I then failed, had to repeat in 2016. I did then pass. 2017 did my second year, or second official year in accounting sciences. Failed again. And I think the misery that I experienced in 2015 compounded over time. And then 2017 was really where I felt the burden of the feelings that I had at the time and the impact, or rather the weight of the failure that, or rather the weight of the misalignment that had been in my orbit for almost 2 years. And for the first time, I actually faced the fact that maybe this is not what I should be doing. So I pivoted into financial sciences. And then I specialized in internal audit. And that was kind of like the first major breakthrough that I had in terms of my academics, but also in terms of my adult life, because it really spilled over into so many aspects of my life. When you're so misaligned, oof, guys, when you're so misaligned, it like seeps into the very parts of your soul that you cannot get back. It affects you so badly, like you can't see past the misalignment. It feels like you are suffocating. It feels like you're living somebody else's life and you can't breathe, you can't catch your breath. So, yeah, that was rough to say the least. But thankfully, I did get out. I did get my breakthrough, and I got to enjoy um, the benefits of being in something that at the time I thought I was suited for. And I thought, this is it. I have made it. I have found everything that I need to be doing for the rest of my life. Little did I know that that would not completely be true, but yeah, I'm guessing you'll catch on as season 3 progresses as well. But yeah, failure was a defining moment in my life and an opportunity for me to really realize that not everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns all the time, but also that it is something that happens to you personally. Yes, people face failure. You're not the first person, you won't be the last, but it's something that affects you personally, and how you deal with that is what's also tested in all of this. So just because you experience that negative thing doesn't mean that it is your identity. And even though it has the ability to consume a lot of your life, to the point where now suddenly the achievements you had up to that point are meaningless, almost nullified, doesn't mean that that is who you are. Your identity is not the failure that you experienced, even though it becomes long term. For me, it was like on and off for 3 years. But that's not me. It's something that I went through, it's something that I experienced, but it's not who I am. So I had to heal through that and realize that. So yeah, that was the one aspect that I wanted to focus on. The other part that I wanted to talk about is making one thing your everything. Making one thing your everything is not healthy. Whether it is a successful entrepreneur, whether the one thing is the beautiful cars that you own, the money that you earn, your spouse, your kids, you cannot make one thing your everything. You will crash and burn. Take my word for it. If there's anything that you remember in this episode, it is that if you make one thing your everything, you will crash and burn. It's not worth it. It really isn't. You have to be a well-rounded person in order to flourish in your life. Even if an area of your life does take over the rest of your life, you end up building a resentment towards that thing. Even if you love it, even if it is fulfilling, you cannot grapple to that to become your everything. You have to be a versatile member of society. And it's okay to take breaks away from that thing. Take breaks away from your kids, from your spouse, from the luxuries of life. And again, even if that part of your life is giving you fulfillment, you don't want to build a dependency to that thing that it becomes your everything, and then you end up resenting it later. Or what happens if it gets taken away from you? If it gets taken away from you, then what then? We're not meant to cling to one thing for everything. It's okay to have outlets, escapes, other parts that you can escape to. We are all multifaceted human beings. So I don't think we're meant to just be, do, and become one thing. Next up, I wanted to chat about the importance of asking someone to sit in the mud with you. It's so comforting to have somebody experience something with you. I mean, if I think about varsity, tests and exams, for example. Oh, this is a ridiculous example, but just go with me on this. You experience a failure in a test, and it's sad. You're sad for yourself, but like it's even better, ironically, if you find out a friend or someone close to you failed the same exam, because then you guys have something to laugh about, but also you're not struggling alone. And I used to find so much comfort. I used to find so much comfort to know that I'm not the only one who failed. I know it's so dark, but like there really is just something about struggling and something together. Because I guess there's a sense of comfort and relatability in that. So having someone sit in the mud with you, whether they've experienced it themselves or not, is so comforting to your soul. And they don't have to do anything. Like, I'm not saying advise me. I'm not saying get me out of it. I'm not saying save me. If anything, and I say this with the deepest compassion, the deepest love, don't save me. Don't watch me like suffer, but like rather support me while I save myself. I don't want to be saved by any partner, friend, family member, a loved one. I'd rather you support me while I save myself, because I need to learn to be able to save myself. So I appreciate the sitting in the mud, because that is a process that needs to happen in and of itself. And I find comfort in knowing that I've got people who can sit in the mud with me, but don't save me. Rather support me while I save myself. And it's important for us to learn the distinction. Next up, and I guess also another overarching theme, is it's okay to start again. You don't have to measure your success against the pace at which somebody else succeeds. There will be ups and downs, and we will all experience ups and downs in different times of our lives. And sometimes that rock bottom will force you to have to start everything from scratch. I'm experiencing that right now with the loss of my job, but I'm also learning to reframe things. It's not a job loss, it's a decision to walk away from my work. But I'm learning to start again with having to, start a new job again, whatever that new job looks like, when I am eventually in the place where I have that new job. I'm learning to start again and the consequences of what that looks like. And thankfully for me, it's not the first time. I had to start a degree almost again, and that also was a new start for me because it was a new residence, a new degree, possibly new friends. It actually was new friends because I was starting basically like 3 years after I had originally started varsity, which means I'm starting with new first years, new second years. And because of the manner in which I restarted that degree, I was kind of like doing some first year modules, some second year modules, one third year module. So I was experiencing starts with different levels of people. Let me rephrase. I was starting in different levels of people's varsity journey. So with first years, with second years, with third years. So it's not my first rodeo. And now I'm kind of like at the precipice of starting over again. And it's hard. Oh, believe me, it is hard, but it's not impossible. And I'd like to think I am better equipped for it this time around. The first time around was violent. Yo, it was so violent. I didn't know what I was doing. Not to say I know now, but it's just better. It's a little bit lighter because I've got a certain element of experience, I guess. So I'm giving myself grace also that it's okay to start again. It's okay to start over. And I've got the privilege of starting over. Some people kind of just have to roll with the punches and keep it going, and they can be miserable, but they need to be miserable while continuing the life of misery because they just don't have other options. And I'm lucky to say that I get to start again and have the support of my friends, my family, my loved ones through this starting over journey that I'm on now. So I'm giving myself grace that it's okay to start again. And as painful as it is, as heartbreaking as it is, going back and, canceling debit orders, losing my car, realizing that I did not think I'd be unemployed for as long as I am. And that also has financial implications, hence the canceling of the debit orders and. I'm giving myself grace that I'm doing the best that I can with the hand that I've been dealt. So, yeah. And then most importantly, and I mentioned this in my speech, so I'm going to say it word for word. You are the sum total of every choice, action, consequence, achievement, and failure that you experience. One thing does not define you. I don't know what more I can say about that. You are not defined by one element in your life. You're the sum total of so much more. And whenever you feel like you're being consumed by one element of your life, I just want you to remember that your identity is not wrapped around that one thing. That one thing should not and will not define you. But it's up to you to fight for that. It's up to you to reclaim control of your life and make sure that you determine your identity as a compilation of so much more than just that one thing that is tearing you apart. So, yeah, that is what I wanted to say. I hope that whatever you're going through, that you know that it is just a season. It is not your identity. No matter how long you've been in that thing, it is not your identity. You were a person before you experienced that thing, and you will be a person after that. So please do remember that. Your breakthrough is coming. It is coming. It is coming. It is coming. I am telling you now, you will have your time in the sun. You will shine again. Things will get better for you. And there will be a turnaround. There will be a breakthrough. I'm wishing nothing but the best for you. I hope you have an amazing day. And yeah, please comment if there's anything that you want to chat in more details. I will respond, whether it be on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And let's continue to have this important conversation of identity. All the best with everything. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner, and I'm wishing nothing but the best for you. We'll chat soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye for now.
And that's a wrap on today's session. Remember, breakthroughs don't happen all at once. They unfold in the moments we choose to keep going, to start again, to believe that more is possible. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their story isn't over. And as you go, keep rising, keep pushing, and most of all, keep believing. This is the Breakthrough Sessions podcast, where every ending is just a new beginning. Until next time.